Hi, I'm Lili. Today I'm going to show you how I made this miniature office set that I've used in my last stop motion animation called Love Has Many Colors. If you haven't seen the animation before, I'm going to put a link above and in the description below. So first I'm going to show you how I made the main structure, mainly with plywood. Then how I've created an elevator, which is a separated piece that I can connect to the main set. How I made the partition wall that separate the boss office. I made the ceiling with the fluorescent lights, all the furniture, all the little props, even the printer and the water dispenser. Enjoy this video. Usually I create my base for the set from scratch, but here I just reused an old base and it's composed of a sheet of 18mm plywood that I've connected to some studs on each side. The board I had wasn't long enough, so I just extended a bit, remove all the texture, sand it down till I have a smooth surface. I also cut out a piece at the back because I knew I had the elevators coming in that spot. I've covered everything with the white gesso to prime it, then apply 2 coats of acrylic paint, and then add lots of different color with the sponge, which is very handy later on because it hides lots of seams. And protect the paint with a clear matte sealer. So the base was ready. For the wall, I've worked with 12mm plywood, 9mm will work as well. I've cut the doors out and the windows out. I've covered all the openings with some basswood and the hot glue gun. I've also added some basswood to frame every door and did the same with every window. Then I covered the whole thing with the white gesso to prime it, 2 coats of acrylic paint, seal it with a clear matte sealer. And then I start to assemble the pieces together. I've lined up the walls against my platform, drill into it, screw it together, and keep building until I have all my walls assembled. And there you go, a big box. For the elevator, I knew I wanted to create a component that I can separate from the main set, so my puppets are much easier to reach when I want to animate them. So to create the elevator, I took a piece of 80mm plywood and some stud to create the same height than the rest of the set. Line my ply on top of the studs, got some 9mm ply for the walls, assemble them with a nail gun just to save some time. Then I've applied a self-adhesive paper to create the flooring and cut the excess with a Stanley knife. I prime all the wall, paint it, seal them, and then assemble them against the base. There you go for the elevator. I place my elevator against the sets and start working on the doors. I took 2 pieces of basswood, 3mm thick, that was a bit bigger than the opening. I mark where the top and the bottom part will be with a clear line out of it. And glue a piece of basswood underneath the bottom line and above the top line. Then I've added another piece, basically creating a channel. And test it out to see if my doors will slide it easily and adjust it accordingly. Then I marked up some line because I knew during the animation it was important to open up the same amount on each side, so I knew I have something visual as a reference. Then I made a bit more adjustment on the bottom part and painted in the same color than the floor. I've painted the doors, sealed them with a clear matte sealer, and slide them back in. It might need a bit more adjustment once you have the door painted. Then I wanted to add some handles, so I've used some metal connecting plates and bend them to the shape I wanted. Then use the hot glue gun to glue them in place, test it out. I've placed my elevator in front of it to make sure I can still access the handles once it's in. Then to make sure it's firmly attached to the set, I've added some angle brackets, marked them up, drill them and screw them together to the elevator and to the set. And test it out to make sure everything is still accessible and visible. For the inside of the elevator, to add some details, I've created some elevator handrails with some flat wire that I just cut to size and bended with a little plier. I've super glued them to my wall using a block of basswood to make sure they lined up correctly. And I've also added some skirting with a bit of painted timber to hide all the edges. There you have an elevator. For the windows, I've used some craft foam, 2 mm thick. I've cut it to size and cut the frame of that foam. I super glue it onto a piece of plastic from packaging. Cut the excess out with a scissor. Then I just tape it with a clear tape to the outside of my set. Now I'm going to talk about the partition wall that separated the boss office space. First, I like to work with cardboard just to make sure I have the proportion right. I know exactly where the door is going to be. Then I start to assemble different bits of buzzwood, different thicknesses, different width until I have a nice design. I've glued everything onto a piece of card to make sure they are well connected together and lined up. There you can see it all assembled. And I later hot glue those two corners together. Place it in the space, make sure it fits right, or do some adjustment if needed. Then I've applied a white gesso throughout to prime it, 2 coats of acrylic paints, and age it with the diluted black acrylic paints. That I remove the excess very quickly with a wet paper towel. It just makes it more realistic. Then I've added some windows with some warbler. You can use plastic from packaging as well, and the hot glue gun. For the glass door, I made a template out of cardboard of the right size for the door and use a piece of warbler that is more than twice the size of that template. I use the heat gun to warm up the warbler, and then I fold it around a black wire and I press it together. The warbler, when it's hot, will stick to itself, and if it doesn't take the shape you want or have lots of bubbles into it, just keep hitting it up until you have the shape that you're happy with. And this is how it looks like when it's cold. Then use your cardboard template to cut out all the excess, and this is my door when it's cut to size. Then I place my door on the right spots, mark where the bottom wire will be and also where the top wire should go. I use a tiny drill bit to drill into the base. Use some very small washer to make sure the door will be able to open and close very smoothly. Place everything together and make sure the door can open and close very easily. For the door handles, I've just used some silver wire. So now I'm going to talk about the ceiling and the fluorescent lights. To make the fluorescent light, first I've made a shape out of basswood. I didn't have the right thickness, so I just glued 2 pieces on top of each other. And then I marked some line to define the design of each lights. Because basswood is so soft, you can use any sculpting tools and it will mark the wood very quickly and easily. So then I had my main shape with all the lines I wanted. I created a frame slightly bigger than my shape out of basswood and use a piece of clear warbler. I warm up the warbler, apply it onto my shape, use the frame to stretch the warbler so that it will take the shape I wanted, and then use the metal ruler to make sure that every line will be marked onto the warbler. If you don't achieve the shape you want straight away, that's fine. Reheat the warbler and keep doing it until you're happy with it. Once it's completely cold, you can take it out and trim the edges. Then I've taped all those lights to a piece of cardboard and apply a 3D paint. My favorite is Pebios and Relief to mark all the grates of the lights, if it's called grate, I don't know, and let it dry overnight. For the ceiling, I've used 9mm plywood and cut out all the openings for my lights, prime, paint and seal it. Then I use a permanent marker, a metal ruler, and I place some craft foam underneath to protect the paint and to make sure I'm not damaging it. And then mark some line, which are supposed to be the metal bars that hold the ceiling tiles. And this is how it looks when it's all done. Then I turn the ceiling on the other side and start placing my lights into the openings, using a hot glue gun to hold them in place. To diffuse the light and make sure I hide the sets behind it, I had to use some polypropylene sheets and just cut some small rectangles and tape them above those lights. Now when it comes to the shelving units, I've used some card because that's what I had available at that time, and the hot glue gun. and so I assembled some shelves in different sizes. You can create the appearance of a cupboard without having to make a functioning door by just filling up the space and hot glue a door. Prime the whole thing with white gesso, paint it, age it, and there you go. So I have a set of different size of shelving, and I also did a little cupboard to go for the tea and coffee on the sides. For the handles, I've just used a bit of wire and shape it with a plier. Now I'm going to talk about the desk. First, I made a sketch on the right scale for the legs of my desk. Then I used some flat wire, 5mm wide I think, and shape it to follow exactly my design. I made sure I overlapped the wire in 2 different spots because I will glue it later on and that will add strength. I copied numerous times for all the little desks. Then I've super glued the part that overlap. For the worktop, I took some piece of basswood and used some wood oil. Once the oil was completely dry, I super glued the legs onto the board. And there you go, a little desk. For the chair, I follow the same principle and I make sure my sketch was next to the table to make sure they look good together and they are the right scale. Then I folded and shaped my wire with an overlapping parts. Copied numerous times, super glue it together. For the seat and the back, I've used some basswood that I've cut to size and set them down. Then I've taped the leg to make sure they lined up correctly and they have the same amount of space in between them. And use some super glue for the seats and for the back of the chair. Then I create a little template in paper to see the amount of fabric I will need to cover the wood. Copy this onto fabric and cut it out. Then apply some hot glue that I spread on top of the seats. Press the fabric onto it and then fold the edges and add some more hot glue to hold the fabric together. There you have a little chair. So now into the office you need lots of props, and I made most of them out of Fimo. Any polymer clay will do. Make some keyboard, make some teacup, coffee maker, mouse, telephone. There's all sorts of things that needs to be there to make it realistic, and I cook it in the oven. For the folders, I've used some leftover craft foam and cut it to size. I've cut some piece of colorful cards and glue my foam board against it, fold it, trim it out. That was the main way to add colors to the set, so I wanted to make sure that I have a nice range of colors. You can add some self-adhesive stickers, scribble a bit, add some details to make them look more realistic. Now to make the bean, I've cut a piece of basswood that I shaped the size and use a wire mesh that I simply press against my shape and sculpt it however I want. That's one way to do a bin. Another way is to do it with Worbla. So in that case I use black Worbla. I heat it up with a heat gun, apply it into my basswood shape and press it together and keep folding it and pressing it until I was happy with the shape. If it starts to go cold and it's hard to shape, just heat it up and keep going. Now for the letter trays that you can see on the desk, I created a little shape with some basswood, a bit of cardboard and the hot glue gun. Then I heat up some Worbla, press it into the shape. Once it was completely cold, I can take it out, trim the edges. I've decided to add a bit of a silver detail to it, so I folded some flat wire to go underneath each tray. I used the hot glue gun to connect the flat wire to the Worbla base and also to stack them on top of each other. I'm going to talk about the printer. I've started with some cardboard to just create some volume very quickly with the hot glue gun. Then I've took some piece of basswood to start building up the top of the printer and keep adding bits until I had a nice shape. Most of it is basswood and just a bit of worbler at the top. Then I heat up a piece of worbler, press it on top of my cardboard, another larger piece to cover the whole front and sides of my printer. And once it's hot and warm, you can shape it however you want. So you can use a metal ruler, for example, press a line onto it, it will hold the shape. Same with bits of basswood that you press for creating the handles, for example, or just any sculpting tools. Then I've hot glued the top part of my printer. Then decide to cut an opening on the sides and glue a bit of basswood into it. And as usual, prime with white gesso, paint, seal, age the whole thing. For the water dispenser, I work in the same kind of way. I build up a volume with cardboard and the hot glue gun, cut some opening at the front, heat a piece of worbler for the top part first, then a bigger piece for the front. And once it was still warm, I press a bit of worbler into it to make sure that it will stretch and follow the shape I wanted. Prime it, paint it, seal it. For the water bottles, I took a piece of basswood and used a metal ruler because basswood is so soft, it will very easily mark. Then heat up a piece of clear worbler, place it on top of my shape, use a frame to stretch the worbler throughout, and use the metal ruler to make sure all the lines are marked and visible on the worbler. Now I wanted this bottle to look blue. The right way to do it would have been to use some glass paint probably, but it takes ages to dry. So instead I've used a bit of polypropylene sheets in blue. Then I've hot glue in between those two parts of my water bottle. And then I super glue the two components together and it looks blue-ish. Then I've hot glued this water bottle to the base of my water dispenser and add some details with the pebbles and relief. Now to finish it off, you can add all sorts of different stickers, details, even up to the switch, sockets. Look around the office space. There's lots of different things that make it look the way it looks. Up to a fire extinguisher with simply just the bits of basswood, you paint it white and you add a sticker to it. Job done. Keep adding props, make it busy, make it a bit messy. I've added some plants with some artificial flowers and a plant pots made of worbler. And ta-da! Welcome to your office. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Next time I'm going to show you how to make a miniature kitchen. Take care.